Greetings. My name is Michael Miller. This is a Michael Miller Pilates and actually it's Michael Miller trademark training video out to you because you're watching. Thank you and welcome. It's meant for Michael Miller Pilates licensed affiliates, the Core New Core, and anyone interested in surviving and thriving as a Pilates instructor. So I have two things to talk about today, and I'm so unaccustomed to talking about anecdotal history. And then I went to wonder who I really heard this about and from. And I think I heard it from Romana about Clara, Joe's wife. And it might have been about Romana, but I'm pretty sure that we're talking about... Anyway, here's the story. It comes with a quote of the title. And you're on YouTube, so you've never seen the quote to the title. Someone came to an authority figure in the Pilates culture and was tattletaling on someone else that wasn't doing all of the exercises in the order of... They weren't doing the mat. They weren't doing all the exercises, and they weren't doing them in order. Something like that. Pointing to, look, they're not doing all of it, right? And the quote that stuck with me is, let them pick the raisins from the cake. For as much as that's a good frame of mind and a good attitude, it makes the point that there are not just raisins, but there is the cake, and without the substance of the cake, you'd only have raisins. I'm not sure if that makes sense or not, but the let them pick the raisins from the cake was an indication that, yes, you can be tolerant, or it's okay to just pick the raisins out of the cake. Okay? I thought that was an interesting folklore tale. And then that was my number one. And my number two is just talking about the mat a little more from where we left off yesterday. And yesterday was long. Oh, on Facebook it got really long. It seemed like there was a lot to talk about, and then I ran out of energy after going through stomach massage, jackknife teaser, as three big exercises that are buffered by sorbet. The spine twist and side kicks. Don't get confused. It goes shoulder bridge, spine twist, jackknife, side kicks, teaser. Right? For me to keep all that straight, I thought of shoulder bridge, jackknife, teaser as big exercises, and in the spine twist, what comes next? The jackknife, right? And so there you are twisting, you're anchored from hips down, and you're twisting from hips up. And then in jackknife, you're anchoring at your hips and controlling the up and down from there. So it's... And then side kicks, if nothing else, as a preparation for teaser. And jillions of side kicks misses the point of pressing the flow. And the flow is where you gotta go. You don't have to, and you can stay in your mind, and you can be muscle specific, and do every version of side kicks you've ever learned. But fundamentally, within MMP and patterns of movement, you're on your side and it's forward and back, up and down, and around. It's define the two planes of our three dimensions in space, and then rotate within them. Happens throughout the mat. We'll get to that. And then teaser, consider the hips and when the hips are anchored and when they're not. So after teaser, because we ended up with teaser yesterday. At least that's how I feel in my recollection. And what do I want to talk about today? The fact that after, see, mine goes blank. I want to make sure I don't misrepresent it. From up in teaser, from commanding this plane in space, when you're sitting on your hips, it's I think there's no tilting that I know of, or so it's missing from going from teaser, which is in plane, to hip circles, which is rotation, and yet it's a natural extension of teaser to hip circles, because once you can balance on your hips, once you have the whole teaser thing down, then what else can you do up there but rotate the legs and strike the chime of single leg circles. I haven't read that. From the one leg circle to corkscrew, right? And if you look at one leg at a time, one leg because it's lighter. That's a key point. Throughout the mat and the loading, you control one leg before you control both legs because of the load. And so you've done one leg circles before you get to corkscrew, which is effectively your whole body as one long leg, making rotation. And then in hip circles, where are we talking about hip circles? Oh, right there after teaser. The only other rotations really in the mat coming after that are add-ins of twist 1 and twist 2. And both twist 1 and twist 2 are add-ins from Joe's original sequence. But when you consider that in twist 1, you're bending at the hip, making rotation and flexion, and that's the saw, right? So you're all the way out to just being in contact with a foot and a leg on the ground, making a twist that is effectively saw, much harder to control, right? And after saw, which is flexion and rotation, you come to spine twist, which is extension and rotation, further away from center. And so twist 2 is meant to have the body nice and long and hold the length of the body, and mirroring the effort in spine twist. Okay. You see, I skipped stuff, and you're wondering if I know that I did or not. So what list do you use for the mat work? Do you use a list, or do you just make stuff up and try to stay fun and entertaining by the variety of your selection, and then make it all the more about you and nothing about any order that's out there, right? That's out there. But really, after Side kicks are in a lateral plane, right? Side bending. And then teaser is in the midline plane, sagittal plane. Cut right down the middle. Comes from the word sword. Teaser's flexion. Hip circles are being in a flexion because you're balanced on your hips. And from there, making a rotation. So it's just like doing the corkscrew, except instead of being anchored at your shoulders, you have no anchor, and you're holding all of your weight in space and just articulating rotation at your legs. From all of that flexion and rotation, where to go in that, but to get out of that and go the other way into extension is swimming. And for all of being balanced on your hips in teaser and hip circles, when you turn over into swimming, that press into your hips is stabilizing yourself in your swimming from the same contact point at facing a different direction, facing down in gravity. So if swimming just weren't swimming, you would call it swimming front. Because like next, okay, so the next exercise goes to leg pull front and leg pull front is facing down in gravity, where you're easier and stronger and easier to control, than facing away from gravity and just doing the leg pull. Why is that version called the leg pull? Because that's Joe's exercise and that's how he named it, leg pull. Right? It's really from the side bend, from the side bend, right? The side bend loses its anchor at the hips and goes to an anchor at the knee to be kneeling side kicks. And the more you ideally occupy the planes in which you're trying to distinguish yourself in, the better the control. To side bend, Joe's, right? That's in Joe's book. That's one of Joe's exercises. But the twist 1 and the twist 2 are since Joe's book, and now we're back into the book with boomerang. Ideal expression of the movement. Joe writes about parallel in the teaser. He doesn't write about it, but I think if it's possible, what you're doing in the boomerang is demonstrating the teaser, but reaching behind you with your arms and establishing a parallel to your legs reach in the boomerang. So as much as the teaser is a quintessential exercise, I think considered to represent Pilates, and all too often somebody representing the teaser has their arms straight up in the air, which is different than in Joe's book. That's all I'm saying. And in Joe's book, he uses the word parallel. And so for me, in talking about boomerang, that boomerang is reaching backwards, and if you have the ability, your arms and legs are parallel, which takes a whole lot of flexibility and a whole lot of strength. But ideally, that's how I do express it when I do it, and how I try to teach towards it. So what takes a beating in the boomerang? You try to mitigate it, but what takes a beating? Is it flexion or extension? So it's serious flexion at the hips, right? And in this whole way, I've hardly talked about the mat in that regard at all. But in terms of one exercise preparing you and getting you ready for the next, in coming out of the boomerang, the load that you hold up in terms of the weight of your legs suddenly gets supported by your arms, your hands, and you get to squeeze your heels together to facilitate the distribution of the engagement at your hips. You get to improve your grip at the hips. You get to lighten the load because you get to distribute more of your musculature in closer to your body, right? So, and what is the seal but rolling like a ball, right? And yet here the legs are crossed. And, no, I'm thinking that in seal, in MMP, you use active endpoints, and so you're in a soft point on the foot with an endpoint of tension at the metatarsals, and the contact that you're, see, I had a lady come up to me after a class. I was just traveling through town and teaching a mat class. And she came up to me and she said, I have two different people going through my minds here, and I want to hook on the one that says, I've never been able to do that exercise. And I was able to do it. Why? And, you know, I don't know. But the point I want to make with you is, and I hope to make when I talk about this in Facebook, is the click, click, click is to be able to find your heels. And on the third one, you make a contact with your heels, just like you do in footwork on the reformer, that allows you to engage your inner thighs, your adductors, right? And take the grip that is possible off of that to deepen your engagement at your core. And the seal in my lists is the last exercise on an intermediate level. And it's great to go from standing into hundreds, knowing that whenever you're done with, whenever you run out of time, or you've broken the sweat that you wanted, or you got as far as you wanted to go, you had to surface and go somewhere else, knowing that the seal is a great finishing exercise toward the end of an intermediate or an advanced mat, allows you to make a transition, if you're careful and you're capable, of going from seal into standing. Because you're rocking and you rock up into standing. But you want to make sure, if you try to do that, that your path is clear behind you, and that if you don't make it up, you can just come back into the rock. The seal turns into the crab if your knees are okay and your neck is okay and you're normal, healthy, and you're not throwing your weight around. It's definitely advanced exercise. So talk to your physician and do it with get a whole lot of training before you go out and just try to do it on your own, or at least have your own insurance to take care of you if it doesn't go well. Because Pilates is dangerous because you're always skating within a realm of control that you have to be focused on or you lose it. And while we're talking about going to hard things, Stephanie Frick has been the best demonstrator of the transition of going from seal into headstand, where we're, I would say, mixing in some yoga because there is no headstand in. Well, see, don't complain. In the mat work, there's no headstand that I know of, and they're just elsewhere in other ways, of course. But going from seal into headstand as a way of transitioning to rocking. Oh, so now I'm giving away how easy it is to, it's hard to talk it and not be in the midst of doing it. Seal, crab. I've mistaken. You can go from seal to headstand to rocking, or seal crab to rocking. If we're just talking about the exercises in Joe's list, or on my mat list, really, because that's what I'm looking at. The seal is a rescue out of boomerang. The crab takes the whole rocket thing closer to center and more articulate in making a contact point with the head and being able to lower and lift the head without impact. Right? Gotta be careful. So whether you're in seal, which is flexion, rolling like a ball, or crab, which is flexion, rolling like a ball, the exact opposite of that is rocking. And after you've done seal or done crab or both, transitioning into rocking, look at that. It's another rocking, right? You're still rolling. It's still like rolling like a ball way back in the beginning, except it's an extension instead of flexion. So if you can actually do that rocking, it's almost like what else could you possibly do before you were ready to stand up tall and move away? I would say that the most challenging thing is balance control, in that your end point is your shoulders and to some extent your ears, but you're supporting the bulk of your weight on your shoulders, right? And yet you're trying to go vertical in your body. You're trying to be inverted, or you are inverted in your body. You articulate the legs. But really, there we are, like acknowledging gravity from the top down or from our shoulders up. And then from that, we come to standing to do the push-ups. And the push-up to me is a going out and coming in, like doing up stretch on the reformer. It's meant to be, okay, so on the reformer, you're in this position, and this is your upper body, and you round up to reach back, all in a smooth arc of flexion, to hinge at the hip, pushing out, holding the smooth arc of flexion from the hips to ears. And so in the push-up, like in the spine stretch, it comes down and goes out and comes back and comes in. And the challenge in the push-up is to use your contact points as a means to maintain uniform engagement of your musculature. To still be working uniformly, even when your hands and your feet are the furthest they've ever gotten away from each other in the course of the workout. Supporting the load of the body. I don't mean like swimming. Okay. So in yoga they talk about a salute to the sun, which is a pattern of movement that's a salute to the sun. And as far as I know, I don't know much about it. And the Pilates mat, all of it, is a salute by the biology to the physics that it finds itself in. So one title in passing was that you get an experience from seeking. Oh no, I didn't mean it that way. You get an experience from reaching for an ideal. When you engage in reaching for some kind of idealization in your movement, I think the very process of trying to be as ideal as you can in whatever way you're trying matters. So, for as much as, see, it's a very contradictory broadcast, because on the one hand, I'm quoting an ancient story to you, and I think it's about someone going to Clara and saying, look, they're not doing all the exercises. They're not following the sequence. And the response was, let them pick the raisins from the cake. It's easy to pick the raisins. It's tough to bake the cake. I like that a lot. All right, so it's easy to pick the raisins. It's tough to bake the cake. And so this discussion about the order of the mat work and what's in play and why it's that way, and at one point said, it's that way because that's what Joe's mat is. And then trying to interpret or to come close, trying to understand what's in place to be able to empower you to make use of what's in place as efficiently as you can. The mat is the method. Study the mat. Study what happens from exercise to exercise. Study what's in common in exercises throughout the sequence, right? And what do you get? Flexion and extension and side bending, rotation and torsion. And all of those things are striving for an ideal expression by a human being that's a water balloon, or a water balloon in space that engages itself internally to move. And that engagement is more than whimsy. Within MMP says, look at this at the hips. It's obvious the core is a grip at the hips. And the muscularity that comes with the grip right behind it are 5 more cousins that you want to go, no, no, I just want to keep thinking of things my own way. But endpoints of tension, core new tension, how can you not be in love with this? Life can't live forever. Read between the lines. See behind the curtain. Add 2 and 2. Geist.